I know you don't mean to, but you make her hate all of her favorite parts of herself. Then he'd stormed off to follow Colleen. Colton had stopped him and convinced him that going after her in a huff wouldn't help anybody. He'd told Court to give her a couple days to cool off. But Court had trouble convincing himself to give her a couple of hours. Court hesitated on the landing, then raised a fist to knock on the door when it swung open to reveal a frowning Colleen. "Were you going to knock or just stand there staring at my door all night?" It probably made Court an idiot, definitely a fool in love, but he liked it when Colleen was surly. He'd come with apologies on his tongue and with soothing caresses in mind, but seeing her look at him with that miffed expression was like a challenge Court couldn't pass up. "Depends," he said, using the smug smirk he knew would ruffle her feathers. "Were you going to let me in?" Colleen only narrowed her eyes at him. "Maybe. What's in the bowl?" He held it out. "Your cobbler from earlier." She glared at him. "Come on, you love it, and if nothing else, you should eat it to spite your mom." Colleen pursed her lips and held out her hand. "You're right. I'll take it." He held out the bowl but didn't let go of it. "Or not," Colleen said, and started to pull back, but Court moved in, crowding her in the doorway, their hands still on the bowl between them. "Let me in, Bart." She craned her neck back to look into his eyes. He dropped the smirk and let everything he felt for her show in his eyes. All the love and the desire he'd been suppressing for the past few weeks. When he'd seen her with her parents tonight, looking uncomfortable on his porch, he couldn't pretend anymore. And maybe, if they talked, he wouldn't have to ever again. "Fine," Colleen said, then grabbed a fistful of his sweatshirt and pulled him inside. He'd expected her to retreat to the far side of the little studio apartment, but instead, she backed him up into the door, placed the cobbler on the side table next to her keys, and surged up onto her toes and captured his lips with a heat he hadn't expected. This was a far better reaction than he'd hoped for. Court closed his arms around her waist and hefted her closer, finally allowing his hands to close over the curves of her ass and squeeze. He ducked down, bending his knees so she wouldn't have to reach so far. Their bodies fit together like puzzle pieces. Her round softness fit against his firm planes, and they both groaned into the kiss as their tongues dueled for dominance. As Colleen sucked his tongue into her mouth, then slowly withdrew, Court couldn't help the slow roll of his hips into hers. She let out a hiss that sounded suspiciously like a "yes," and that was all Court needed to hear before he squared his feet, shored up his core, and grabbed the top of her thighs. With a little hop, Colleen had her legs wrapped around his waist, and he was angling toward the bed on the far side of the studio apartment as she assaulted his neck with hot, open-mouthed kisses that had him navigating the apartment by feel. His shins knocked against the coffee table, his hip against the dresser, before his knees touched the edge of the bed, and he tipped Colleen back onto it. She bounced against the mattress once, but Court didn't give her a chance to do it a second time, as he ascended upon her. Court's hands slid under her t-shirt at the same time he used his own body weight to push her up the bed until they were centered. She wasn't wearing a bra, and he groaned as his hands closed over her full breasts and tugged on her peaked nipples.